Welcome, Nicole, to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this time with you. It's a treat. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we kick off the show, Nicole, with a little bit of information, encouragement, motivation for family caregivers in particular from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So I'd love to get your thoughts on whatever we're pulling out today. Okay,
Yeah.
it says eat to fuel your body, not to feed your emotions. Oh, I feel like this is speaking to me today.
All of us, right? Yeah, it's so true. And I've learned, throughout my journey with food and my life, and I feel better when I eat to fuel my body. And I think, especially in our caregiving, we want to have energy, we want to feel good. And even for myself, I know that I've just been trying to implement things like I never took vitamins before. Okay, well, I need to do that. And I need to eat like real food and just carve out time or even like make time to eat. I think as caregivers too, we can get really busy and just not take the time to stop and slow down and nourish our bodies.
I like literally I just ate a protein bar because I was like, I
Yeah.
looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost 1:30. I haven't eaten lunch yet. And
I
thankfully I have
know.
some healthy things that I keep on hand.
Mhm.
Some pre-made smoothies and protein
Yeah.
bars that don't have a lot of garbage in it. So it made me think I will link to the Amazon store where I have shared some of my favorite things
It's a great
that
idea.
help me. But like smoothies, I love making my own smoothies in particular. Like
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
that's my jam because it's a great
Yeah.
way to kind of get a bunch of nutrients in a very quick way. And when I was a
Yeah.
working caregiver, I guess I'm still a working caregiver, but when I was a corporate working caregiver, uh, it was easy to kind of make them ahead of time and grab and go. So
Yeah. Do you have like a
yes,
go-to favorite recipe you like to use?
it depends if I'm in a chocolate mood or a berry mood, but
Okay.
I use a vanilla protein powder base for either one. And then I'll add like cacao powder and cacao nibs and a banana,
Yum.
stevia. I usually sweeten them with stevia
Mhm.
and the frozen banana, ideally, to kind of make it.
Mhm.
And then the berry one, I love raspberries and strawberries and all of that. So
Mhm.
sometimes I'm in the mood for one or the other, but I can share a couple of those. I'll put them in the show notes page.
Yeah, I
What
love
about
it. I
you?
Yeah, I just discovered I do like making my own smoothies, but I just discovered for when I'm like really on the go, Chobani has a protein drink with 20 grams of protein. And
Mm.
it's a quick, grab at the grocery store. I keep them on hand and I put chia seeds in there and I shake it up.
Yeah,
And
you
then I've
elevate
got,
it.
yeah, then I got my protein, I got my chia seeds. It's been my new favorite way to that's what I had this morning actually, as I was doing some work. So it was
I
perfect.
I had a protein shake this morning. I think it was by Rebel, Rebel. I got it at Whole Foods. I've been following this guy, Health with Hunter. I'll link to him too on you know, Instagram. And I
Yeah.
just like him because he's like, I love a good haul and he shows hauls and what he bought. And then I tried this, I think he recommended Aloha lemon cashew
Oh, that looks really
protein
good.
bar, no non-GMO, try to find light sugar and stuff. Because sometimes
Hmm.
you think you're eating good stuff and then you look at the back, like this one has 14 grams of protein, total sugars, 5 grams of
Oh, that's
sugars.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And taste like I'm a lemon girl, so I love that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Organic, gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, plant-based.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, we've given you guys a lot of different options there, but that's a grab and go, like having that stuff on hand. That's, I think, so key. All right, let's get into the meat of the conversation. So we met in person at the Care Colloquium, which was kind of a one-time, I think, event, or we haven't
Think
had
so.
in Roanoke in
Yeah.
2022, and we were on the same panel.
Mhm.
I think we were talking about, I was trying to remember, I think we were talking about the language that we use when we're talking about caregiving and particularly older adults. And I learned so much from everybody on the panel. What was something I think that you contributed or you would reiterate about the language and some of the stuff that we say when it comes to caring for older adults?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is good. I have to like really think back, remember the details. Yeah, I want to say it was also, I think we were talking about workplace. Does that
Yep.
ring a bell? Like workplace. And a lot of the hurdle is that our caregivers don't always self-identify, right, as a caregiver. So
Mm,
how do we use language so that we know, wait, that's us. We can look for support when we don't know what we're looking for, right? We can't find it. And so I think when we understand we are a caregiver, we're supporting our loved ones, whether it's full-time, part-time, even at a distance, right? And whether it's a neighbor or a friend or a parent, that we still can have access to all those caregiver
yeah.
resources. So yeah.
That's such a good point. It's like, it's hard because we know there's, now that we're in this space, in the care economy space, and like we know that there's good stuff and there's good resources out
Yeah.
there. But if you don't know what you're searching for and those words, that
Mhm.
you might not find it. Like you're thinking you're just not just, but a
Yeah.
partner, as someone caring for someone who needs more functional or disease focused care. Like it's caregiving is everywhere. It's everywhere. So that's a good reminder that it is the language we use. So often I'm sure you meet people too. It's like we start talking to them and they're like, "Oh, well, I just do this for someone or I just do that for something." I'm like, "Yeah, you're a caregiver. That's
Yeah.
I know maybe you don't want to take that label on, but
Right.
that if you put that in or caregiver
Mhm.
support or things like that and see what will pop up."
I know, I know, I know. The care colloquium was wonderful, and I think, okay, if what it did was at least bring us together for that moment in time so we could all meet each other, so much has come from those relationships, since
Agree.
that time. So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
special time.
Yeah, a lot of great podcast episodes. I know
Mhm.
we're going to get into yours and talk about that too. But let's talk about your caregiving story. So you helped
Yeah.
care for your grandma Betty, and this really made an impression on you. Tell us more.
It did. Yes, it really did. I was at an impressionable age. So I remember my parents sitting us down in our family home and, that I literally was born in since I was a baby. And they said, we are going to move. We're going to move our house. And grandma is moving from Illinois at the time. We're in Minnesota. She's moving to move into our family house. And
Oh, wow.
so we as a family, and there's a lot of us. I'm one of four kids, so six of us in our home, and looked for houses that could accommodate grandma. So one that we found had, when you walk down the stairs, it had this little apartment area where she could have her own space, but yet
Mhm.
still be in the home with us. And it was a hard time. I was really excited for my grandma living with us, but I remember feeling like I was starting high school. Life was busy. You're moving where you used to live, and all your memories
Mm.
of, designing my bedroom, all of those things that, are surface in a way, but as you're a young person, everything feels like a really big deal. So,
It is
and my grandma,
at that
yeah,
age. Yes.
that age. And my grandma, we always had a really sweet relationship, but now we were becoming roommates. And my new bedroom was on the same lower level floor as my grandma, and we were going to be sharing a bathroom. She could, see whenever I'd have friends over and my boyfriend at the time. And it really was this moment of I now have like a new roommate, and it was beautiful in that we just could grow our friendship and our relationship and have those special moments. And in the beginning, our caregiving really looked more like social support. She didn't drive far distances. She would have meals with us. She would come to our sporting events. And then obviously as time went on and her health progressed, we had to step in a little bit more with that. So yeah.
I'm like thinking about like the sharing the bathroom. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, teenage Nicole is like trying to do her hair and makeup, and
All right.
grandma's got her, issues.
All the things.
All
Yeah.
the things. Oh my gosh. Looking back on it though, like what do you take
Mhm.
away from it?
I take away the cherished time of our conversation and her insight, having that older generation and being able to ask those questions and her wanting to learn about my life and teach me things. She taught me how to knit. She always loved Wheel of Fortune and we would watch that together. She was like the loudest cheerleader at all of our sporting events. And it gave me an understanding of the importance of learning about people in my life and family and what it was like for them to grow up and what recipes did they love and what traditions did she want to take forward and share with
Mm,
our family, and having conversation and also being open to being really flexible of what I thought my life would look like as a young person living in our family home really changed drastically. We didn't just have our family dinners anymore, weren't that, what's
mm.
the word, nuclear family. It was now extended, and there were many rich blessings with that and a lot of change and a lot of challenges that came with it too. Another person that wanted to try to parent us as teenagers and
Oh.
have a say about, I remember, if we'd get in trouble or do something, there was then another addition of someone having a thought about that.
Oh my gosh. I don't think you were
Yeah.
that much of a handful though. Like I'm trying to think like Nicole, although I know like yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm sure we could surprise people.
Yes,
Uh
I did give my parents a run for their money a little bit at
same.
times. Yeah.
Same. I used to write poetry and like smoke cigarettes, blow
Yeah.
smoke out the window, write
Yeah.
poetry, my own. I love to look at my old poems now and like, oh my gosh, what was
I
Elizabeth,
know.
but I can relate to moving, at that.
Mhm.
I moved when I was in eighth grade and from like
Mhm.
a little rural town in Pennsylvania to Georgia. And while we didn't bring grandma with us, like it was still like that's a
Yeah.
very hard thing to do to kind of, you know, tear you out of like everything that you thought
Mhm.
was going to be true. Well, and now I know you have a company. Part of what you do is you have a company that honors your grandma. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Yeah. So I really merged my two worlds together from being from the family perspective, right? Caregiver world. And through that experience with my grandma, I went on to study gerontology and actually make it a career,
Mm.
and worked in senior living for a lot of years, ended up working as a director. And dual had this family caregiving dynamic and working more on the professional side. And my grandma, towards the end of her health journey, moved into the senior living community where I worked.
What? That's
Yeah,
unique.
yeah,
Interesting. What's
it
that
was.
like? What's that
Yeah.
like?
It was so interesting. It was the first time I experienced what families go through when you need to navigate that change, right? And understand what that move is like. And thankfully, I had kind of the inside scoop on that, and we made that transition really seamless. But it was also interesting to hear feedback from staff or have conversations when we'd have our, quality assurance meetings or care conferences, and hearing the professional technical side of her healthcare and what was going on and how they were navigating that. And then, how does that get communicated to the family? What lens, does that bring in? And it was good. And in some ways, because I was there right on both sides of it, I did probably act as this mediator or communicator. And that's unique because most families don't have that bridge
Mm,
directly to the care team, or I could, dig a little deeper. And if there was challenges to overcome. And part of that, my grandma really had a hard time with male care staff
mm.
with the care routine and more of the intimacy, the more of the intimacy care routine. And so we had to work through that. Like what were we going to put in place that would make her feel comfortable? But yet I know on the professional side, it's always, you can't always
Get
plan
what you
for
want.
that, get
Yeah.
what you want, so it's just a really interesting time, but I learned a lot about compassion, communication, the importance of the transparency with the care team, and they so want to do right by the families and the residents and really want to meet their needs and have them feel comfortable. And just knowing the extent and the level that they went to with their quality gave me so much. I never questioned her level of care and the oversight. They were just fantastic and amazing, and being able to have kind of the inside scoop on all that goes into providing really good care. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so different, right? Like my mom lived in an assisted living community, and with families, you can provide this like on-demand type of care, almost like you do with like one infant in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are in a community, you have to have schedule and systems, and you're doing
Mm-hmm.
things at scale. And I know that was where a lot of the friction came with my mom, who had never really experienced that before and had this expectation of having things the way she wanted all the time. And so
Yeah.
much of my role was trying to like teach her how to advocate for herself, and I make her at least see things from the other side of the perspective of
Mm-hmm.
like, no, your shower is at 8 a.m. on these certain days. And if you say
Mm-hmm.
no, you don't get it till the next time they have you in the queue. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I
Yeah.
put together kind of my list and tips, which I'll share,
Mm-hmm.
of like when people are looking at senior living, and some of the lessons I learned and things I wish I would have known. But
Right.
what's some of your tips and advice for people who are thinking
Yeah.
about that or maybe frustrated with the current experience?
Yeah, that's so great. I had a thought when you were sharing about, like the bathing schedule, and what I've seen too is an evolution within senior living where they're really wanting to accommodate those preferences, right? We're realizing there's that term person-centered care. So how are we meeting people where they're at in those needs, and trying to do the best to accommodate that? So we're moving more in that direction, which I think is very hopeful, because for a long time, there was the set schedule. Even meals are evolving, right? Before it was like breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 5. And now they're really understanding that not everyone wakes up at 7 a.m. And if you've got 10 people that are a part of someone's care team, you start waking that first person up maybe at 6 and getting everyone up by a certain time. So knowing that we all have natural schedules within our day. So anyways, we could go on and on about
Ah,
that topic,
I would love
but
that. I would love that.
but
Bring it. Bring the
but
person-centered care.
yeah, so it's exciting that they're really seeing the value, and how do we support that? Tips with senior living, there's such a variety of care options. So I think first, and I'm sure you include that, is what are even the options available to me? So understanding what that looks like. Do I want a large community? Do I need more independence? Do I want a continuum of care, right? That life plan where
Mm,
I can move in when I'm really active, and I will be able to stay on site if my care needs progress, if I were to need more of that um, long-term care support or memory care, right? Are we looking at memory care communities, and are we more residential style, or do I want something that has a vibrant activity schedule where I really want to be busy all the time? So understanding kind of preferences
mm,
of your loved one or you personally, and kind of understanding that dynamic. And then cost, I know that the
mm.
financial investment that goes along with that. So there's a range of housing options depending on budget, and understanding where are my financial resources and where will they be used best. And do at some point I anticipate needing Medicaid support, and
Mm.
certain communities allot a certain amount of rooms, not all communities, but some, where it's that like almost elderly waiver where this room is allotted for this type of payment, and we can have access to that if I were to need it. So knowing what your options are if you might foresee that those financial resources are limited. Um,
Yeah.
I always say stop by unannounced.
Yeah.
It's great to make an appointment and meet someone, but when you stop by unannounced, you get a really good feel of the tone. What are people, engaged? Are they pleasant? Are they able to accommodate any visitor? Because there's nothing to hide. They're just welcoming of whoever stops in and whatever family wants to have that conversation. You might not get a full tour and the full experience, but that can happen at some point. You see different places and get an idea of each culture at each one. It kind of lets you know what you prefer. And I always tell families, while of course we like brand new buildings and really pretty things and a lot of amenities, I place so much value on the people present and the culture of the team and how engaged they are and how happy they are. There's a community where I live that I always recommend people to, and they're not the newest and the shiniest,
Right.
assisted living in the on the block, but the level of care and how they interact with the families and the amazing support they provide the residents, it is like bar none. And so I would choose that for my loved one any day over, the brand new big fancy
It's so easy
community.
to get.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we had mom in two different places, and the first one we picked for the reasons that you like, it was felt like a
Hmm.
country club, like it felt like it wasn't, it was shiny. They did have a lot of amenities. And then we ended up moving her because of the care. Like,
Hmm.
they had a lot of turnover in their people.
Hmm.
They had somebody that was they had the same care companions doing
Hmm.
everything, like doing the med
Hmm.
tech type of stuff and the meals and moving people. And it was just too much for them. Like my mom was
Yeah.
diabetic, so they wanted to have her meds in her room. By the time they would get her down to the dining hall, like she wouldn't be able to sit with her friends, she and then she didn't want to go, and it was just like one thing after another like that. Well, there's the next place that we selected was really focused on care, and I knew the questions to ask. I was like, how,
Hmm.
who says this and when does this happen? And they had separate medicine related people versus like the
Hmm.
companion care. And that's what my
Hmm.
mom needed for her high
Yeah.
level of care.
Yeah.
So it's like, but you don't know this. And since you talk
No.
to caregivers and talk to
Right.
experts like yourself, like you're just a
Yeah.
wealth of information for people about
Yeah.
this topic and many others. And let's talk about that. Tell us
Yeah.
about your platform and your podcast.
Yes, yes, thank you. So going through that whole personal side, professional side, I really had this desire to how do I bring what I've learned in my personal experience and share that with families, right? Empower families. And so having Will Gather, which is this platform where I just want to equip those older adult caregivers, healthcare professionals with information. I think when we feel empowered, when we know how to make decisions well, then we're able to do that with confidence. The podcast is an extension of Will Gather. So within Will Gather, the podcast, I help advise different companies on advisory board and have the caregiver gift shop, Gigi Betty Co., which we'll get into. But the podcast is really a place where I found when I, I don't know, lack of a better term, like in the industry, I had access to education and training and seminars, and I always felt like, why do families not have access to this? This is exactly who needs to know all the things, and really wanted to create a place where I could share all of that information with them from caregivers, from experts in the field, from educators, from thought leaders that are doing really, really great work. So families know even what's available for them to access to support their caregiving journey. So, given the navigating the world with your aging loved one, aging is so broad and holistic, right? We're all at different places of that journey, and the topics are a wide range of topics, anywhere from dementia care to age tech to health and wellness to our caregiving and learning from other caregivers, those support resources
Mhm.
um, from uh, authors that have written really great books about, how do we prevent dementia? So there's such a holistic side of that when we're looking at when we're growing older, the financial piece, the legal side, the managing our emotions and self-care. It really just encompasses all of that. So, and it really just stemmed from my relationship with my grandma, my family, my professional work, and seeing that, if I can be a conduit of that information to support people, that makes me happy. Yeah.
Yeah, it just should not be this hard, right? Like,
Right.
why is this so
Right.
hard? Yes. And the podcast is great. Of course, we're gonna link to that. We'll link to the your Will Gather platform, and then share a little bit. I know we've had we have a coupon code for the Gigi Betty
Yeah.
with the Happy Healthy Caregiver community under the Style for Caregivers and Care Recipients topic.
Yeah.
So I'll link to that. But what is Gigi Betty Co?
Yes, it was really out of my grandma was loved fashion and she loved really beautiful things. And I always felt like I wanted to give a meaningful, thoughtful gift and I wanted it to mean something. And when I looked around and I know there's caregiver gifts out there, I wanted it to be where you could gift a caregiver in your life or in support of the caregivers that was thoughtful and that had meaning behind it. So it's jewelry at the moment, and I know we'll expand those product offerings, but we've got bracelets and necklaces that all symbolize, um, they're all named after caregivers that I know and that mean
Ah,
something to me in my life. And our necklace that we have, it's 18 karat gold plated. That's the Gigi signature necklace named after my grandma. And it's a way that if you've got someone in your life that you want to show support to, in remembrance of, that you're able to thoughtfully do that. And we donate a part of those proceeds for nonprofits that support respite care for caregivers
amazing.
and raise that awareness. So
I
I'm
love
excited.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. And it helps, an entrepreneur and all of those things, caregiver. So I feel like your motto is probably, I have a motto that I say of like, I'll never
Mm,
be bored, because
mhm.
you're also involved in a think tank. And I know you said your
Yeah.
academic background is in social gerontology, and then you have this
Yeah.
professional experience, but tell us some more about this think tank work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's been about the third year. My business partner, James Lee, who is a wonderful thought leader in the senior living aging services space, and he is really the idea behind it. He created this and he owns dementia care communities in Texas. And so he has hands-on work with families and older adults. And really, when we think about this space and all that we have to overcome in it, we are moved by great thinkers and great doers, and it really brings change makers together that are like-minded, that want to build leadership skills, deepen their relationships. But also, a piece of it is that we take different topics or different challenges we see in the world of aging and care. And as a small group, work together to combat some of those and to offer support and hope for the world, really. And we do that through whether it's sharing a short film, a webinar, a white paper that we then release to the greater good for people to then have that
Mm,
free access to that resource that then they can use and implement. So it's a unique time. We meet twice a year, once in May, once in December, where we come together and we not only grow our own leadership and know our purpose and how to share our story to the world, but then work on tackling these issues together, to come together and then support the people that we care for. So
nice.
we'd love
I
for
love
people to
that.
join us. Yes.
Yeah, where do they find more information about the think tank?
Yes, you know what? I'll give you the link to include, and we're
Okay.
coming up. We have a new website that's about to be released shortly. So
Yes,
I'll give you
share
that
all of
information.
that.
Yeah.
And then I know we've connected, but maybe we could share a little this insight on the show is
Mhm.
that you recently attended the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
What stuck with you since that event?
Oh my goodness. CES was an incredible opportunity to see what was happening in the world of specifically age tech, really. It was AARP, Age Tech Collaborative, had a massive presence in being there in this technology world. And so they had all of their companies that they've supported that provide various technology and services for older adults. So when you walk in, they had a massive stage present and all of the companies that they were highlighting. So you could walk around and see the innovation that was
Mm,
happening. It was so cool to know that they're bringing everyone together. They had panels that gave discussions all day around, inclusivity in age tech, and how do we address diversity, and how do we come together, with getting technology into the hands of people that might not have access to it. So those are just to touch on a few of the topics.
Yes.
So I was encouraged by the presence in, a mainstream technology conference, that age tech really almost was like the shining star to be honest,
Yay.
in
Go
every way.
agetech.
So I know, so the conversation that's happening, and it is moving mainstream. And I know that given a lot of the data and statistics with the buying power and just meeting the needs of all of these older adults, it's going to be really cool to see what happens from there. So
I
yeah, it
love
was fun
it.
to be there.
My professional background is in information technology, and I love when the
Yeah,
intersection of these types of things happen. Um, I'm a part of a group in Atlanta called Age Tech Atlanta. So we meet
I
and
love
we
it.
learn from each other, and of course support each
Yes.
other. And I'll link to that too in the show notes. Um, and then recently I had an opportunity with a partner of mine, Connected Caregiver, to go to Nashville market and talk about how technology can help be a part of the care team. Like, we're running out of hands, like physical hands, when it comes to helping care. And so that's where I think there's so many opportunities and things that just we've heard of that exist, like
Mhm.
Uber and TaskRabbit and, DoorDash and Instacart, like all of those I think have a place. But then the other things that people don't necessarily know about, like some of the things that we've spotlighted on this show, like the previous episode with Paula, where she's talking about the thing that looks like a frame, but it's a way that they can communicate with their loved ones. Or, there's so many different things. Zinnia TV is another great one,
Yes.
different caregiving apps.
Yeah.
And so many different solutions are coming up. So I'll link to the segment in the Nashville thing that we did. But yeah, amazing stuff.
It's so amazing. So you must know, is it Jeffrey Gray? Because is he head of the Age Tech
Yeah.
Atlanta?
Did
Yeah,
you meet him?
I got to meet him. It was great. I know. It was so
Y-
fun to see everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of shining stars in Atlanta. So it's like I don't necessarily get to every meeting, so I might have
Yeah,
missed something, but it's so nice to kind of know that Atlanta's kind of got a big role in some of this. So
it
and we'll
does.
link to CES. So if somebody wants to check that out, if they're in this space, to go on there. So cool. Lots of good stuff going on. What about, let's talk about self-care for a little bit.
Mhm.
Your self-care tip for other people has to do with leaning into support. And
Mhm.
I love this part about the positive voices. Like, can you
Mhm.
expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, my personal story, not only with my grandma, with my mom, but I had a surgery last year, and I was in that role of having to receive care, which is uncomfortable for a lot of us that are like really independent. And so this for me is really, dual-sided, in that in moments when we feel really overwhelmed and a lot is happening, we have to lean into people that love us and offer support without that guilt or shame. And having those positive voices in our life, even our own voice,
Mm.
how we speak to ourselves. And I read something, and I'm not going to be able to quote it, but our brains don't know the difference if it's us telling our brain something or if it's someone else or something else. So the importance of, we might be able to absorb positive thoughts externally, but if we're not being kind to ourselves, we're not getting the benefit of that. And just the importance of how we speak to ourselves and
Mm.
what we absorb, and I think both you and I really feel that even those podcast voices and how we're encouraged by our network, how we're encouraged by our friends, really do so much to get us through those days, because there are times when we aren't capable of doing that for ourselves, and we need to be lifted up and supported by other people. And I like that term, that can love us louder than we can in some of those moments. And so with my surgery, I was able to experience and have gratitude for the love and support I received from others when I wasn't great at accepting help in the past. And if I hadn't gone through that hard time, I never would have had the opportunity to see how well people around me could love me, or
Aw.
even how I could love myself, and just the treasure of that it deepened my relationships to see how much people cared. And I know not all of us might have those really big networks. And when I say people cared, I'm thinking of two people specifically, right? So if you've got like that one voice, um, for me too, it was also I leaned into some podcasts that were encouraging for me. Lewis Howe was a voice that comforted me. Mel Robbins, Brene Brown, all of those names I know we're familiar with, but for me in those moments, it was that external encouragement that I needed. And so I love that lens of Brene Brown when we have all these emotional challenges of caregiving, how in our vulnerability and when we say that we need help and we need that support, it leads to a deeper connection with others. And it leads to, I would say, them understanding that they can step in for us when a lot of times I think we're resistant to that care. And
Yeah.
if we try to hide in the secrecy of that and not talk about our feelings or how overwhelmed we are, we then feel like we're living a separate life, and there's that shame in that. And so when we bring things into the light and we can have that empathy present from other people, it's like that. It's a powerful antidote to shame. So,
Yes.
yeah,
So,
it
I
gives us
mean,
that
it's
self-compassion.
so, I love everything that you said. And like sometimes I hear from the folks that I talk to, caregivers and coach about like, they're not getting enough help and like really kind of unpacking that and what that looks like. And a
Mhm,
lot of times I'll have asked them, like, well, have you let the cracks show? Like, you've
mhm,
got to kind of like peel back the layers and kind of let the cracks show in yourself.
mhm,
um because we make a lot of assumptions about things, or we kind of have this narrative in our head of how things are going to play out. But if we
mhm.
really let the cracks show, that's how the light gets in, and that's
Yeah,
how the things, and it's like, what if you just
yeah,
kind of put it out there and reached out, and
yeah,
what would really happen, and how could that positively impact you, and have like such a big impact on where you are today, Nicole. And I'm hoping everything's good now since your
yes,
surgery.
yes.
Okay, good.
Healed from surgery. It was a longer road than anticipated, which I think was what was unexpected. But I'm here. Yeah,
Yay, thank
yeah,
goodness. And
yeah.
and you talk a lot about like the importance of people being vulnerable and sharing their
Mhm,
caregiving story. Like, why
mhm.
is that?
I think it's so important. There's when we do not, and you talk about that when you said if we don't let our cracks show, right, we can't let the light in. And if we are not fully letting ourselves be seen, just really scary for a lot of us, if we don't have the courage to share our caregiving story, we don't then, I feel, give other people permission to do the same, right? We're all living in this place of pretending that
Fake,
everything's
it's fake
fine.
news.
It's
Yeah.
fake news.
Yeah.
It's fake news. And so we are robbing ourselves and others from being able to learn and to grow from us or us from them. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and honest. But I think when we do that, then as a collective, we can come together and create awareness, not only in our immediate circle, but our broader world, right? If no one's able to have these hard conversations, then there isn't going to be change and there isn't going to be momentum or advocacy for caregivers. And I think, you know, part of the caregiving is that if we're by you having people and caregivers share their story, by us highlighting and having these conversations, we're saying it's it's okay to show your true self and what you're going through. And if we don't know the exact struggle, and if we don't know the exact challenge, then we're not able to find the right solution, right? Or the right support. And so it's, caregiving is often this one portrayed one dimensionally when we know how complex it is and that it is a combination. And I love you say this term too, where two things can be true at the same time, right? we
Yes.
can we can have the burdens of it, we can have the rewards of it, and there's such a full spectrum of that. And so if we're not sharing that accurate picture of the joys and challenges, there isn't this relatable picture for people to pull from. And when we have our own story in caregiving and we can share that, the good, the difficult parts, we break down stigma, we can have support in those challenges, we can have people identify and, see parts of themselves and in our story that we're going through. And I think as humans, we connect through vulnerability. When I think of my deepest relationships, whether it's my friendships, my family, my colleagues, our relationship deepens when we share real things with each other. And
Yes.
so you start to build that trust. You build shared opportunities together. You can understand each other. We learn from each other. There's also this idea of all of the voices being raised together do create that awareness and advocacy. And so having that supportive community come around you only gives us a bigger voice together. And we're not going to do that if we're all hiding in our own stories.
Yeah, and
We
thinking
have to.
nobody cares to listen to
Right,
it. I
right.
mean, I'm convinced, Nicole. Like I hope that
Oh.
somebody listening to this is convinced that maybe like is holding back a little bit. And like, what are you waiting for? Like, do
Mm,
you want it to change? Do you want
mhm.
the change bad enough to step out of your comfort zone? And maybe it's
Yeah.
hard, like it is hard. It's hard to do that. You've got to, and to your point, like ugly cry with people or
Yes.
like let the cracks show and all of that. And if it's hard at first to do that, then maybe, journaling was one way that I kind of got to like help me process things and get my voice out there. So journaling might be something that people want to
Yes.
try on as a
Yes.
self-care habit to see if that works for them. And it is important to spotlight these stories because like I didn't think of myself necessarily for a long time as a care advocate because I was like, well, I'm not like driving policy change or anything like that. And they're like, no,
Mm,
you're sharing the stories, which is the stuff
mhm.
that is helping to give faces to these 53 million
Yeah.
family caregivers in the US. Like we need to know Nicole's story. We need to know, Loretta and Paula and some of the
Mhm.
recent stories that we've spotlighted because they're all complex
Yeah.
and everything is so different. And I love what you said about vulnerability leading to change.
Mhm.
And we're broken, so we need some
Mhm.
change.
We do. We do. Yeah, it's normalizing those conversations, those caregiving conversations so that it isn't these where we highlight it periodically. It's like, no, this is a part of our world conversation all the time because we're all in it. I mean, you just said 53 million unpaid family caregivers
In the
and
US.
more in the US, and
I
it's
know.
more going to be growing. So just the importance of doing that. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. It's like, and like I said, we'll never be bored. We got plenty of work to do.
Mhm.
And I've seen it like, I've been doing this for 9 years now. It's hard to believe. And it's like I have seen a lot of change and I'm still learning and growing like all the time. There's so much
Mhm.
information and new things. And like I'm, now a support caregiver for my brother Tom, who's got an intellectual and developmental disability, like completely different
Mhm.
path to navigate than caring for my parents. So wow, like it's a lot. I'm so
Mhm.
inspired though by the conversation and I really am hoping that people take this to heart, this vulnerability and let the cracks show. I used to say like when I was more transparent, I saw myself more clearly too.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
So
Well, thank you
cool.
for giving us a place to share.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I want to get your thoughts on some of the prompts in the Just For You daily self-care journal. So I wrote this journal and I wrote it with caregivers in mind, but I really wanted people to have like a little taste that wasn't very intimidating of what like trying on journaling as a habit could do for them. Maybe I want to sit down and start writing some memoir or some big blog post,
Yeah,
but this was a way maybe to help people prioritize their self-care. So let's get your thoughts on some of
I
these.
love it.
Um, okay, this is a fun one. What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Oh, what's my favorite guilty pleasure? Chocolate and football, watching football. What's my other favorite guilty pleasure? Oh my goodness. I would say I love to, I mean, chocolate's like gotta be. I like have a stash that I hide from my family that no one
What's
can.
your favorite? Like what's your go-to chocolate? Like that you're like,
Oh, I like an espresso chocolate, like a dark
mm.
chocolate. I like peanut M&Ms. That's like a big one. Raisinets. I mean,
I was wondering who
any.
liked those Resinettes, Nicole.
It's me.
Do you like snow
It's
caps too?
me.
I'm just curious.
I don't.
Okay. Because I'm always like, who's eating these? But too
I'm,
funny. But peanut
yeah.
M&Ms was definitely when I was
Yeah.
pregnant, that was definitely always my go. I felt like I could be guilty, but I was also getting a little protein, so it didn't
Yeah,
necessarily.
that's true. Yep, that's true.
But a chocolate covered pretzel, that would be like that's got my name on it
Oh,
for sure.
so good.
We're gonna go binge on some chocolate now.
Mhm.
Okay, I know you live in Minnesota, so what is one of your local attractions that you've been meaning to visit but haven't yet?
Oh, okay. I have to think about this because in my previous career in senior living, I would bring my residents to every like attraction.
Ah, well,
So
maybe what's your
I
favorite one then?
know.
Just like
Oh, one
one
of
that
my
sticks with
favorite.
you.
I love our Minnesota History Museum. It's beautiful and it has just so much history present, but the exhibits are, I mean, they just come to life. So that's one of my favorite spots. I also love our Mill City Museum. It is in a part of our historic North Loop part of Minneapolis, which
Hmm.
has like those cobble brick streets
Ooh,
and it's kind of the history of milling, but how they have it set up, it just is very interactive. So my residents and I, we loved that. Um, the theater, I love going and hearing live music. There's a
same.
really cool little venue called the 7th Street Entry, and it's next door to First Ave, which First Ave is popular for anyone that knows Prince. He
Yeah.
perform there. And so a lot of famous musicians have come through there. But this venue, it's really intimate. And I've been able to see a couple people play that then went on to be like massive, selling out Red Rocks. So it was fun to see them in this like in tiny little venue first and then go from there.
It's a beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Minneapolis. I used to be a creative memories consultant. So they
Oh,
were
so good.
headquartered
Yeah.
in St. Cloud and I used to go to the showcase conferences and
Mhm.
loved it. Of course, we went in the summertime. It was beautiful.
I know. Yes.
Um, last
Summer's way better.
summer, yeah, well, it's like Michigan, which is my like home away from home
Yeah.
too. What last question is what energizes you right now?
What energizes me? Honestly, I'm energized by the people I'm meeting recently and the inspiration and the encouragement and the work that they're doing. I feel like when I leave some of these conversations I have, I'm like, I almost feel this adrenaline. Like
Good.
I'm super energized by that. So that's been really, really fun. I was so energized after CES and meeting everyone in person and, just I think when you meet people that know, when you know their heart's in the right place and when you know they're really doing good work, it's just encouraging and it just, the
Gives
energy,
you
you just kind
hope.
of want to like be, yeah, be a part of it. Hopeful
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Invigorating. I totally get that. And it's a good plug too for like the importance of social self-care, like getting
Mhm.
out and being amongst the people, like getting out of there.
Yeah.
So good. Well, is there anything that you wish we spoke about that we didn't, or you have any kind of parting words of wisdom for family caregivers?
Oh, I mean, we did share so much, which I love, and just the focus on gratitude and the joy, right? Focusing on that joy. I think it's so easy to want to narrow in on what's not working, what we're upset about. I'm so guilty of that too, but I am such a happier person when I can focus on the gratitude. It shifts my perspective. Even if it's the little thing, like I woke up today and we're in Minnesota and there's not snow on the ground, which is amazing. And the sun was shining, which is unusual for this time of year.
Yes.
And I'm like, thank you, sun. Thank you for not being snow. It's making the winter just so much better. So even in those hard moments, I think it just counteracts all those other negative feelings. And I know it's hard to do when we are not in the right headspace to do that, but maybe a little bit can start to shift that perspective
Yeah,
for us.
so
So,
good.
yeah.
It is a practice, right? It is something that you just have to kind of like retrain your brain to do. And I
Mhm.
know I try to advocate for that myself, because when I'm like coaching individuals, I always ask them, like, I think the first question I ask them always surprises them, because I say, "What's going good in your life?" And
Mhm.
sometimes it's like a deer in headlights. Like they just can't, and like there's got like one thing, and it's just we've got to kind of learn how to like
Mhm.
figure out like there's something good, and usually people can come up with something
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
but yes. And then on in our self-care group, Facebook group, we have Thankful Thursday, and that's always kind of like a reminder about the gratitude, um because it is easy to kind of go down that slippery slope of just doom and gloom and oh my goodness. And I know like there were so many Facebook groups out there over the years where I've been looking, and I'm like, they are kind of that space, right? Where it's just a lot of
Mhm.
venting and negative stuff and energy. And I was like, I don't want to be a bright side person and like, but
Mhm.
I do think there is this mindset of focusing on that and
Yeah.
amplifying those things, and once you start doing it, I think you then become a believer in the power of that, the power of your
Yeah.
brain, and like it's like goes back to the things you were saying earlier about the
Right.
self-talk.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so true. I couldn't have said it better myself.
You did. You said a lot of amazing things. I'm so
Oh,
excited to get your nuggets out of this. But Nicole, how do people find out more about the products and services that you offer? Like where should we send them?
yes, you can visit willgather.com, which is WILLGATHER, and that will lead you to where to find the podcast, where to find Gigi Betty Co. in the gift shop, and connect with me. You can fill out, and there's an email there, and I'd love to be able to do that. So thank you.
So good. I'm excited to see what comes next out of your think tank and all the amazing stuff that you're doing. And I'm just grateful. Going back to great, I'm just grateful we got connected. So
Thank you. Me
thank you
too.
for all that you do.
Thank you for having me.